For years, Donald Trump has spoken openly about Venezuela's oil reserves. They are among the largest in the world, and to Trump, they represented both wealth and leverage. So, when U.S. forces carried out a rapid operation detaining Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, many observers immediately assumed the motive was simple: oil. And that explanation is tempting. Trump himself fueled it, promising to open Venezuela to American energy companies and portraying the operation as a long-overdue correction of what he described as a hostile regime squatting on valuable resources. But oil alone does not fully explain what happened. Because if this were purely about energy, the strategy makes little sense. The United States is already... Trump's move against Venezuela fits into a much wider worldview, one focused less on cooperation and more on domination. In this view, international politics is not about rules or institutions. It is about strength, submission, and spectacle. Venezuela presented an opportunity: a weakened state, an unpopular leader, an economy in collapse, limited capacity to resist. This was not simply a foreign policy decision. It was a performance of power. The message was not just for Caracas, it was for the region. It signaled to neighboring countries that resistance carries consequences and compliance brings survival. In that sense, what made Venezuela especially dangerous was not just opportunity, it was confusion. Multiple ideological forces converged at once. There were hardline advocates of regime change, nationalists obsessed with immigration, advisors drawn to dramatic displays of force, strategists nostalgic for American hemispheric control. These ideas did not form a coherent doctrine. They collided. Venezuela became the place where all these impulses overlapped, not because it solved a problem, but because it allowed Trump to act. And in Trump's political universe, action itself is the point. The operation allowed him to look decisive. Key figures inside the administration reinforced this direction. Secretary of State Marco Rubio brought a long-standing belief in force-driven regime change. His political career was built on opposition to leftist governments in Latin America, and Venezuela had always been central to that worldview. By reframing Maduro not just as an authoritarian leader, but as a criminal threat, Rubio made intervention easier to sell. The language shifted. From diplomacy to law enforcement, from sovereign... Trump has always been drawn to moments that look powerful, even if their outcomes are unclear. Fast, decisive, visually compelling. The Venezuela operation fit that pattern perfectly. In public remarks, Trump described the event not in strategic terms, but in cinematic ones, emphasizing speed, force, and drama. It was not presented as governance. It was presented as content. Screens, images, narrative. In that moment, foreign policy became performance, and the audience... Beneath the chaos and contradictions of Trump's Venezuela operation lies an idea that is anything but new. It is the revival of a belief that the Western Hemisphere should remain firmly under U.S. dominance, a mindset rooted in the 19th century and dressed up for the 21st. The administration has openly flirted with a modernized version of the Monroe Doctrine, the notion that Trump often speaks of outcomes in tangible trophies: land, resources, assets. Venezuelan oil fits neatly into that mental framework.
It can be pointed to,
Counted,
claimed.
but the reality is far less glamorous. Venezuela's oil infrastructure has been hollowed out by years of underinvestment, corruption, and sanctions. Refineries are outdated. Pipelines are failing. Skilled labor has fled. Perhaps the most alarming aspect of Trump's Venezuela policy is not aggression, but inconsistency. There is no clear articulation of what authority the U.S. intends to exercise, how long involvement will last, what political structure is expected to emerge. The consequences extend far beyond Latin America. When a powerful nation disregards sovereignty without a clear framework, others take note. Allies grow nervous. Rivals grow bolder. Norms erode. Trump's strike on Venezuela was not a carefully engineered strategy. It was a collision of impulses.
Oil, power, spectacle,
Ideology. Each played a role, but none provided coherence. And that incoherence is itself the story. It reveals a foreign policy driven less by planning than by opportunity, less by values than by performance. Superficial actions coexist with deeper ambitions, some reckless, some historically rooted, all consequential. Whether or not Venezuela proves profitable, whether or not this operation is remembered as a success, one fact remains clear. The world is entering a period where power